Welcome to Arlington, Texas, and day one of Big 12 Media Days. Not quite deep in the heart of Texas. We're in North Texas, so this is maybe the collarbone or possibly the shoulder, some anatomical body part or something like that. I'm Nate Catiso along with Dan Hawk and Lee Benson from News 9, and we're going to take a look back at a very busy day one. We were introduced to Brett Yormark, the fifth commissioner in the history of the Big 12. And now what's in front of him is expansion talk. And he was very aggressive today, Dan, about being upfront and saying, look, we're going to not leave any stone unturned. We're going to be aggressive in terms of expansion talks. Dan, in your opinion, do you think the Big 12 is a stable enough conference to take in other teams?
Absolutely. I think right now, if you look at the landscape of college football, they are maybe not the breadwinner. You're still going to talk about the SEC, but they're not a conference that's folding anytime soon. I still think the Pac-12 is looking at it like, oh, what's going to happen to us? What are we going to do? Who are we going to add? Because they don't really have any viable teams that are in their geographic area. Now, once again, geographics is kind of thrown out the window anymore with USC and UCLA going to the Big Ten. But with that, what's left of the schools that are non-Power Fives, there's not that much that's left out there that could be viable for the Big 12. But I do think they're going to expand in the future.
You know, Lee, this is so strange because it was some 11 years ago where we were thinking the Pac-12 was going to raid the Big 12 and take Texas and take Oklahoma and Texas Tech and other schools, and now it's the other way around.
Yeah, Big 12 was caught flat-footed last year, but now the Big 12 is in a position of power. And you heard Brett Yormark say today that they have fielded some calls from some Pac-12 schools. Nothing's imminent right now, and they're going through all the different options. So, Pac-12 schools to the Big 12 is certainly a possibility. And I agree with Dan that the Big 12 is in a good spot. I mean, you got the SEC, the Big 10, obviously getting USC and UCLA, but the Big 12 is positioning itself as that third conference right now. The big question for me is what's the sweet spot for teams? Because at this point, a year from now, Big 12 will be at 14 teams, adding those 4 teams, plus OU and Texas are still going to be here, most likely. Well, I shouldn't say most likely, because you never know with the changing landscape. Who knows? Maybe they'll buy out. But either way, it's going to be 14, then it'll be back down to 12. But who knows? Maybe it'll get up to 16, kind of where the Big 10 and the SEC is. And that's kind of what I'm waiting for is what's the number? What is the number for potential super conferences? And that's what we don't know right now. And I don't know if anybody knows that right now.
That's right. And as far as the teams that are still in the Big 12 right now, the Big 12 media preseason poll was released last week. The top spot went to the Baylor Bears, who defeated Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game last season on this very field, matter of fact. Oklahoma State came in third, and that's the team that was focused today, and OU was picked second. And I have to ask, was there anything wrong with that media preseason poll, at least with that top 3, Dan?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Brent Venables is going to retool, reload, and just continue to keep pushing this wagon down the road. I don't see a problem with them being number 2. Baylor obviously won the Big 12 this past season, and so I don't see a real problem on keeping them up on the top pedestal. Dave Aranda, what he was able to do in his first year, no one projected Baylor to come out of the gate slugging like the way they did. The only question mark that I'm kind of curious on, and Lee will probably add to this, is one player on the preseason poll for OU. I've never thought I would say that, and the one player, a punter, that's something that I never would have thought. But why not surprise the world? I mean, Brent Venables even tweeted it out, probably to motivate his own team. Let's get this thing going. Let's go back to where we rightfully belong for them on the top of the Big 12 conference.
Well, punters are people too.
It's true. It's true.
But this media poll that came out last week broke a 6-year streak for OU being at the top of the conference. Do you think we're going to see another repeat of Baylor and Oklahoma State in this championship game coming up in December, or will the Sooners break their way in?
Sure. If I had to say right now, no, I wouldn't anticipate that. I think Oklahoma should have been number 1. I understand they didn't win in the conference for the first time in a long time last year, and they lost Lincoln Riley, and they lost Caleb Williams. I get it. But Brent Venables is perhaps the most prepared first-time head coach we've ever seen. If there's any other first-time head coach that's more prepared than Brent Venables, I haven't heard of him. And Jeff Lebby coming in as the offensive coordinator, it's a weird thing. The offense is kind of the question mark with Oklahoma because I think the defense is going to be better under Brent Venables, at least more fundamentally sound. So that's going to help. And just the talent level of Oklahoma is still there. I mean, they still have a lot of good guys. They're recruiting really well. I think it's defensible that, say, Oklahoma State should be number 1. Oklahoma State's got a lot of good players back as well. Baylor, I'm not so sure. Quarterback-wise, I know Blake Shapen's a good player, had a good Big 12 title game. But I got to see more. They lost a lot of really good players on defense, and they lost a lot of talent on offense as well. A couple of top receivers, their running back. Their offensive line's good, so that'll help them as well. So I think those are the top three, but I could definitely see OU 1, Oklahoma State 2, and maybe flip those. But as far as predicting who's going to play in this game in, I don't know how many months, 5-6 months from now or so, I'd say Oklahoma and Oklahoma State would be a pretty good bet right now. But the way college football is working right now, July predictions are useless, as we all know. But it's fun to talk about here at AT&T Stadium.
They're always purposeful. But one thing I will say is for Oklahoma State, they lose their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles. He takes the job at Ohio State. In comes Derek Mason, where there's no Colby Harvell-Peel, there's no Malcolm Rodriguez. What is this defense, in your mind, going to look like when they hit the field in September?
Well, at least they got Tyler Lacey, Brock Martin, Colin Oliver there on the front, and more. Trace Ford should be back and healthy. I mean, the front is really good, and that's a great starting point for Derek Mason. It's interesting. He's going to try to do a lot of the same things that Jim Knowles did. And hearing Mike Gundy talk today about how Derek Mason doesn't have an ego. I mean, he's been a head coach, he's been a coordinator, but he came in and he said, hey, you know what? I'll do a lot of the same things Jim Knowles will do. No problem. He didn't want to come in saying, let's scrap that defense and bring my own in. So that's pretty unique. I'm kind of curious to see how that plays out. Can they really run the same type of system that Jim Knowles had? And if so, it took Jim Knowles until year 3 and then 4 to get really good. So is it possible that this Oklahoma State team could jump right in with Derek Mason running the same system and be as good as last year? I'd say the odds are against that. But again, up front, they're so good. They just got to figure out the linebacker spot. And aside from Jason Taylor in the secondary, they're pretty thin as well. That's what fall camp will be for, though. All those competitions, and I'm sure they'll figure it out.
Dan, we're talking about a team that had 57 sacks in the 2021 season.
I think the numbers are going to continue for them. Derek Mason is a coach that has been a head coach before. It's not something that he's going to have to learn the system and whatnot. I mean, that's why Mike Gundy brought him in from Auburn. I think it was the best pickup that they had this offseason next to the recruits that they are bringing in. I think the Presley brothers on offense are definitely going to make some noise because those two, I seen them run all over the place at Bixby back in the day. Now they're going to get to be back on the same field. But as far as the defense goes, I agree with Lee. I think the only question mark probably be the secondary, but that's stuff that you can pick up through fall camp.
As far as quarterbacks are concerned, Spencer Sanders is coming back. You don't have to worry about Caleb Williams. You don't have to worry about Spencer Rattler. Baylor's looking at a new quarterback with Shapen. Is this pretty much his league now as the starting quarterback of Oklahoma State to be the best quarterback in the Big 12?
I wouldn't count out Dylan Gabriel. This guy played at UCF, was part of a championship team. Obviously, he's got hurt. He went to Oklahoma because he wants to win. That was probably the best spot for him. New coach, new system. Why not take a chance with Dylan Gabriel? I think he's going to truly make some noise. I'm not saying he's maybe at the caliber of Caleb Williams or Spencer Rattler, but he still has enough offensive firepower in his arm to definitely make some noise this fall.
Anytime you're talking about offense, you mentioned Jeff Lebby, but certainly Lane Kiffin as well, and the work he did or he has done at Ole Miss. Mm-hmm. How much of a difference in offenses are you expecting with Oklahoma?
Well, I mean, it's going to be Jeff Lebby's system. I mean, I know Lane Kiffin's an offensive guy, but that was Jeff Lebby's system, and he called the plays there. So it's going to be very different from Lincoln Riley. I mean, they're still going to spread things out, but Jeff Lebby likes to run the ball a lot more. And I know Lincoln Riley does too, but you look at Ole Miss, you look at Oklahoma the past couple of years, the run-pass splits, Ole Miss has ran the ball more. You mentioned a couple of those quarterbacks, a couple wild cards. Texas, Quinn Ewers, what's he going to look like? We've never seen him play really at all. And then also Adrian Martinez, a transfer into Kansas State. That's kind of unique. But I'm with you. Dylan Gabriel, he's got the pedigree. Now, he's going from UCF to the Big 12, but he's got a lot more talent around him than he had before, and you would hope maybe a pretty decent defense with Oklahoma. So he's kind of a wild card as well. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you think that, positive thoughts. But, it's a new thing, and there's no Lincoln Riley anymore, so it's fair to kind of be skeptical. And I know that a lot of people around the nation are skeptical about Oklahoma's offense as well.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. I know we at Griffin have spared no expense covering Big 12 Media Days. So far, we had Dan Hawk, who did his radio show from 9 o'clock until 11 a.m. on the Blitz 1170 in Tulsa. Lee did about 70 hits.
Is that many?
I
lost count.
During the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock. 71?
Yeah.
This is number 71.
This is number 71. But you can find us on social media at News 9 and News on 6 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're also on TikTok. Seriously, we are on TikTok at KWTV News 9 and at KOTV News on 6. You can catch Dan Hawk on his show
9 to 11 a.m. on 1170. The
1170 The Blitz in Tulsa. Lee will have more from here in Arlington coming up tonight at 10 o'clock. You can also download the OTT apps for News 9 and News on 6 if you have Amazon Fire TV, if you've got the Apple TV, if you've got the Roku. I have the Roku personally. It works out for me just fine. But yeah, we'll have plenty more coverage from Arlington later tonight and also tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow night.